I am George Robert Yost from Cairo, Illinois. I joined the crew of the Ironclad USS Cairo on January 25, 1862, when I was 14 years old as a first-class boy. I joined a diverse crew of sailors. They were boys and men, dark skin and light, not only from our country, but from 10 foreign countries. Our commander was Lieutenant Nathaniel C. Bryant. Our Ironclad was constructed close by at the Mound City shipyards by James Eads. On January 15, 1862, it became part of the Union Army's Western Gunboat Fleet under Flag Officer Andrew Hull Foote. After being assigned to the Ironclad, we made our trial runs to get familiar with it. I decided to keep an account of our daily activities. Soon we received orders to sail to Clarksville, Tennessee, and secure an important railroad bridge there. We sail up the Ohio, Tennessee, and Cumberland rivers, finally approaching Forts Defiance and Clark on February the 17th. Fort Defiance sits on a strategic 200-foot bluff across the Red River from Clarksville, and we expect a battle. But Lieutenant Bryant spots a white flag flying over the Confederate fort, and no guns are fired. When we arrive in Clarksville, there are no rebels to contend with, as they have left before our arrival. However, before leaving, they attempted to burn the railroad bridge we came to secure, but the fire didn't take hold, and we put it out before it could destroy the bridge. After a short stay in Clarksville, we received orders to sail on to Nashville, Tennessee, and secure that city. On arrival in Nashville, we discover that the rebels have already departed that city. So far, we've only fired our guns for practice. After several weeks in Nashville, we are ordered to head back down the Cumberland River to Savannah, Tennessee. We arrived there March the 31st. The next day, General Grant sets up his headquarters at the Cherry Mansion on the Tennessee River. We pass by the mansion as we depart sailing down the Tennessee River with the gunboats Lexington and Tyler. We joined Brigadier General William T. Sherman against the Confederate batteries at Eastport, Mississippi. We arrive at Eastport and run our guns out firing a few rounds, but there is no reply. There were no battles, but at least we were able to fire our guns for a reason other than practice. We received orders to move back upriver to the Cairo, Illinois Naval Base to defend them against a threatened Confederate attack. Flag Officer Foote has received word that the South has completed 13 gunboats in New Orleans, and he fears these will join the ram Manassas and go up the Mississippi River against the Union fleet and bases. We arrive at the Cairo Naval Station on April 5th. Later, we hear news that on April the 6th, a surprise Confederate attack on General Grant's troops near Savannah, Tennessee, where we had just left, resulted in a major battle at nearby Shiloh, Tennessee. We now have more reasons to complain about our inability to take part in battle action. While at the Cairo Naval Station, Lieutenant Bryant has the pilot house strengthened because the Confederates at Fort Donelson had scored damaging hits on a sister ironclad by centering their fire on the pilot houses, killing and wounding several men. Flag Officer Foote was struck on the ankle by a piece of iron during the battle. Today is Friday, April the 11th, and we have just received orders to head down the Mississippi River to join a fleet of Union vessels that are anchored off New Madrid, Missouri. Word spreads among the crew that we're going to attack Fort Pillow, a stronghold guarding the approach to Memphis, Tennessee. We're ordered to wait behind to protect the unwieldy mortar boats. Meanwhile, Flag Officer Foote's ankle wound has become worse, and he is forced to retire. On May the 9th, command of the Western Fleet is handed over to Captain Charles H. Davis. On May the 13th, I write, at 10 p.m., a rocket was sent up from the flagship to signal for action. In 10 minutes, all hands had their hammocks lashed up and were at their quarters ready for action, but the rebels did not come. We were kept at the guns all night. Weather warm. Mosquitoes worse than the rebels. A Confederate fleet of rams steams up the Fort Pillow just as the mortar boats guarded by our sister ironclad Cincinnati is being moored to begin its daily bombardment of the fort. The move by the rebels catches the ironclads unprepared, some of them without sufficient steam to hold against the current of the river. Their engineers throw oil and anything else that is flammable into the fireboxes in order to make steam. The Confederate General Grant ram dashes at the Cincinnati. The ram continues boldly on under fire from nearly the whole fleet and strikes the Cincinnati a violent blow. few moments later, the Confederate General Sterling Price ram runs into the Cincinnati, carrying away her rudder, stern post, and a large piece of her stern. This throws the Cincinnati's stern to the Confederate Sumter ram, which strikes her running at her fastest speed. The Confederate General Earl Van Dorn follows behind the Price and Sumter rams. It runs towards the Union Mound City Ironclad, which is shooting broadsides into them. The Confederate Van Dorn silences the mortar boat. Mound City Ironclad, a glancing blow, making a hole 4 feet long in her side. We move from across the river and have our first chance for battle action. As our guns are rapidly fired, a ball from the Van Dorn strikes our center port. It glances off without doing any damage. Then we turn our attention to the damaged Mound City Ironclad. We accompany her until she grounds herself. As our cannons are inferior to the Confederates, we are forced to fall back to shallow water. The Cincinnati Ironclad sinks near the shore, and the Mound City Ironclad sinks on a sandbar. These two ironclads will later be raised and repaired under the guidance of James Eads. 3 more Confederate rams enter the fight, but they realize our boats have taken positions where the water is too shallow for them to go, so they depart and steam south to the protection of the heavy guns of Fort Pillow. As the Confederate boats flee downstream, we follow them until we see the guns of Fort Pillow, and then tie up a short distance upriver. Our mortar boats hurl 200-pound shells in a bombardment that will last for 7 weeks. Day after day, sometimes at a rate of 1 a minute, shells are dropped upon the fort. The Confederates fire back occasionally, scoring hits, but never inflicting serious damage. A joint attack on Fort Pillow with troops moving in from the land side is planned for June the 5th, but the rebels evacuate the fort and burn it down on June the 4th. By noon of the next day, the Confederate fleet has moved to Memphis. At last, we have something to talk about. We have taken part in what is described as the first fleet action of the war. We now advance on Memphis, arriving there the evening of June the 5th. At dawn, the Confederate fleet, consisting of 8 rams and gunboats, are facing such a shortage of coal that it is unthinkable to go further downstream. They form a line in front of the city to await battle. We start the battle at 9:30 a.m. by firing our 42-pounder bow rifle. Throughout the action, we keep firing, rescuing men from the water, and finally taking part in the running battle. Finally, the rebel gunboats are sunk or run ashore. 2 more are seriously damaged, and only one, the Van Dorn, manages to escape. By 7 a.m. the battle is over, and we have won. We stay in Memphis for 6 days before heading back upriver to Fort Pillow, where we stay 3 months on patrol duty. On September the 9th, I write, at 8 a.m. we weighed anchor and start down the river. We arrived at Memphis at 8 p.m., dropped anchor astern of the gunboat St. Louis, and went ashore at 8:30 p.m. to buy grub, but returned about 12 midnight without finding any, the stores being all closed. On September the 12th, I write, at 1 p.m. we received on board Commander Selfridge as our captain, Captain Bryant being in ill health. He was sent home to recruit his health. Commander Selfridge, although a hard worker, has a record of misfortune. 2 of his previous vessels were sunk while under his command. Our first assignment after he assumes command is to guard transports taking rebel prisoners down the river for exchange at Vicksburg, Mississippi, and to return with the repatriated Union soldiers. On the way back, Commander Selfridge gets into an argument with Chief Pilot Oscar B. Jolly, one of the best on the river, who promptly resigns. After the incident, we all begin forming our own opinions of the new captain. At 11 p.m. we drop anchor about 50 miles from Helena, Arkansas. I had to stand watch from 8 p.m. to 12 midnight today for not getting my hammock early enough. While there, we received notice from Rear Admiral David D. Porter that an active campaign on the Mississippi is about to begin. It is to be another advance on Vicksburg, this time by land and by water. The Army under General Grant is already moving south from Tennessee. Our assignment will be to help clear out the Yazoo River of rebels as far up as Greenwood, Mississippi. On December the 11th, a reconnaissance up the Yazoo is carried out by the Tenclads, Marmora, and Signal. Some 20 miles up the river, they spot several suspicious items floating on the water. A seaman on the Marmora fires a musket at one of them and it sets off a huge explosion. They realize they have found some of the vaunted Confederate torpedoes. They return to the mouth of the river and say that the number of small scows and stationary floats they saw indicate the presence of other torpedoes. They believe they can take them from the water and deactivate them if they are protected by 1 or 2 gunboats. Commander Selfridge requests permission to use us on such a venture, and Fleet Commander Henry Walk consents. He also designates the gunboats Pittsburgh and Ram Queen of the West to go along with us. The officers are told to avoid the channel where the mines are set. We proceed up the Yazoo River with the other boats. Occasionally, sharpshooters fire from trees on shore, and a few shells are fired at us without damage. Commander Selfridge becomes impatient with our slow progress. He shouts orders to the Queen of the West to go faster. Someone on the Marmora shouts back, "Here is where the torpedoes are." The other officers realize that more speed imperils the safety of the boats. Commander Selfridge sees firing coming from the Marmora, and it is aimed at a block of wood floating on the river. He gets impatient and seems to have little fear of the torpedoes. We take the lead and advance into the unchecked waters. We were drifting dangerously close to the shore. 8 heavy guns atop the Drumbull's bluff opened fire and were quietly answered by our 3 forward cannons. Commander Selfridge yelled for the engines to be reversed, then seeing he was about to strike another gunboat, ordered them to get out of the way. At 11:30 a.m., just as we were training on a battery which is about 2.5 miles up the river, we were struck by a torpedo, which exploded under the forward part of our boat. We were then told to leave quarters and take all the small arms we could and go aboard the Ram, which we did in double quick time, I can tell you. I saved 2 revolvers, and most all of us saved something. As we are pulled aboard the other boats, all we can see of our Ironclad are the tops of our 28-foot smokestacks and some flagstaffs poking above the surface of the water. One of our sailors later said that Commander Selfridge had doomed our vessel the minute he stepped aboard. Rear Admiral David D. Porter sends the following message to the Honorable Gideon Welles, Secretary of the Navy. Sir, I regret to inform you that the Cairo Ironclad has been blown up by a torpedo in the Yazoo River. In the summer of 1956, 94 years after sinking, the Cairo remains are found. The gunboat is recovered and is on display at the Vicksburg National Military Park in Vicksburg, Mississippi.